All right, guys, well, here it is. We finally are getting a chance to drive the Mark 8, the 2022 Volkswagen GTI. This has the 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder that we've come to know and love. It makes 242 horsepower and 273 pound-feet of torque. A little bit of a power bump in this Mark 8, which is very nice. We have a limited slip front differential. We have a 7-speed dual clutch DCT in this one. And interestingly, this GTI is actually a European spec car. So we've got some different headlights, which are actually really nice. This has the IQ light from Volkswagen, which I wish we got in the United States. We have a Euro plate and some different interior trimmings. But for the most part, this is a very similar car to what we'll be getting in the United States. The big difference, though, is Volkswagen has had a bit of fun and fitted this GTI with Potenza RE71Rs. And if you don't know what the RE71R is, it's the time attack tire of choice. Super grippy. We are not going to be getting factory handling characteristics out of this drive today, but it is a good reminder for all GTI owners to go out and get a sticky set of tires for your GTI because it is a lot of fun. Normally, this would come on all seasons. Apparently, Volkswagen couldn't find the all seasons or couldn't source them, so they just fitted them with really sticky track tires. All right, let's hop in, start this GTI up, and show you around the interior. This is where the majority of all the changes have been made. You can see we have a much more minimalist design in here. Very simple, a lot of haptic buttons, a lot of touch controls, which you know me, I don't love. But what I do love are these seats. They've kept the plaid seats. We've got very nice bolsters. We've got a really nice design. Can't go wrong. I like the welcome sign when you step in. Flashing start-stop button. Oh yes, very familiar sounding 2-liter turbo. We have a fully digital gauge cluster here in the center and a 10-inch infotainment display. A very minimal design in this new GTI. We have some changes here. Some are better, some are worse. Most of them are worse, actually. I like the way this looks, but I think they've sacrificed function for form. Gone are a lot of the blank switches, which is good, but also gone is a handbrake. What good is a GTI if you can't do handbrake turns? We just have this electronic parking brake. Oh well. Porsche-style looking shifter for this dual clutch. Kind of interesting there. And a park button, start-stop button, wireless charging down here. And then we get to the infotainment, the climate control, the lagginess of this entire system and the frustrations that come with it. I hated the ID4's system, the infotainment, the user interface. It was really, really frustrating to live with. This GTI, though, is better. It's not a deal breaker, but it's a frustration. And the biggest reason for that is that you can only view one screen at a time. If you're on Waze, you've got your navigation going, you want to go change the radio station or change something else, you have to go through a bunch of different menus, and it's just a laggy, slow, and tedious system to navigate. Volkswagen infotainments have never been the best, and this is one of the worst. At least it's pretty, it looks good, it's well designed. When you first start up the car, it's super slow, super laggy, a little bit glitchy. You do have a few quick access buttons down here, which is nice, but the response from this stuff has to be quicker from car manufacturers. If we're going to make everything controlled in a screen, it's got to be as fast as our smartphones. You do get volume controls right here and temperature controls for your HVAC, but ultimately, it's not enough. There are so many menus in this infotainment. For example, let's try to turn off traction control. So first, we have to go to Vehicle, 1. We're going to wait. We're going to go from Status to Vehicle, 2, 3, hit Brakes, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 inputs, you guys, to turn off traction control, whereas before, it was a button. What's wrong with buttons? We've got buttons for windows and door lock and lock. And then we have these haptic controls for our lights. I don't know. It's fine. Like I said, it's not a deal breaker, but it's definitely a frustrating experience using this car's user interface. Otherwise, pretty nice looking interior. Materials are about how they've been for the last 10 years. This really doesn't feel that much different or much higher quality than the Mark 6 that I had in 2010. Steering wheel is great though, excellent shape. These haptic buttons are okay. I'm occasionally hitting the heated steering wheel button when I'm going around corners, but for the most part, it's been pretty good. Cruise control is easy to operate. These menus you can customize, which is very nice. You get a few different views. You can customize whatever gauge is on the left, whatever gauge is on the right. You can change your view of the whole gauge cluster like that. There's a bunch of different options. We don't have GPS enabled on this car because it is the Euro spec. A few different gauge options for those who want to switch it up a little bit. We've got a nice looking reverse camera, not as wide as most cameras on the market, though that might change for the US spec car, who knows. Another neat little Euro spec thing is no warning labels right here, which I think is kind of cool. We have a Harman Kardon sound system. I don't have a Monroney on this car, but that leaves me to believe that this is maybe an SE, which is going to be around 34 grand-ish, thereabouts. Let's look in the back. This GTI does have a slightly longer wheelbase, which I think leads it to have a little bit more interior room, but you know, the GTI has always been about the same. Pretty nice place to be back here, plenty of leg room, plenty of headroom, easy to get in and out of. We've got rear climate control, a couple of USB-C ports, a nice center armrest and cup holder situation. I mean, it's a good looking interior, don't get me wrong, but you know, the first day with it, if you don't crash into anything, you'll start to figure it out, and then it just gets easier from there. Rear hatch, same story, looks very familiar, looks very similar to previous gen GTIs. We've got our subwoofer down here, no spare tire. Nice little grab handle for the hatch. Love the design on these taillights. And an interesting note, we've been absolutely thrashing this car all week, and the exhaust tips have remained perfectly clean. I don't know how they do that. Magic. We have a very interesting front lighting setup. Look at this light bar that goes across the front end. Very recognizable once you learn what it is, and kind of unique. I like it. All right, let's take this thing for a drive. It's time to get behind the wheel and see where this GTI shines, because we've had some negatives that we've talked about so far, but really this car is still the GTI that we've all known and grown to love. We're just going to leave ESC off. So the 7-speed dual clutch, very similar tuning and character to the last GTI. It's very smooth off the line. Shifts are great. This is almost a flawless transmission. It works really well on manual mode. We've got a sport mode. Pretty much how it's always been. Personally, I've always preferred the manual transmission in these cars, even though the gearing has gotten a little bit long and there's been a bit of rev hang, but I haven't driven the manual Mark 8 yet. I can't speak to that 100%. Seamless downshifts. And it still sounds pretty good. The sound dock door up front is doing its job. We've got a few different drive modes. Unfortunately, we have to press this haptic button to get to them. I've got mine set at individual, which is pretty much the suspension in comfort with everything else in sport. A lot of fun to play with the paddles, super responsive. We have a lot of settings in this car. Eco, comfort, sport, and then individual, you can really get into the weeds with your dynamic chassis control. You can set this GTI up to have very stiff suspension. There's a lot of adjustability in the dampers. I like it in comfort though. It's pretty nice. It's a pretty good daily setup. Not too stiff, not too harsh. It's a nice middle ground. Pretty quiet at speed too. There's a little bit of a undertone from the exhaust from the engine, but for the most part, there's no drone. It's very livable. An easy daily driver, like it's always been. Let's talk about cruise control. So, if we want to engage cruise control, it'll actually turn back the ESC on now that we've got it off. We can set our speed, and adaptive cruise control works very well. Lane keep assist works very well, keeps us nicely centered in the lane. It doesn't last very long, only a few seconds, so it's useful for when you need to take your eyes off the road and literally change any setting in the car. I'm not sure how well it works or if it works with a manual transmission though. Something that maybe someone can chime in the comments about. Let's throw it into sport mode here. The suspension will stiffen up, the steering will weight up. Do we have enough time to turn off traction control before the light changes? We'll turn off stop start. It's a race. ESC off. Off. Go off. Confirm. We got it. All right, here we go. Into the corner. 65 miles per hour. These tires are absolutely insane, you guys. And that front diff has a ton of traction out of the corners. Great handling. I mean, it's a little bit of a false sense of the capability of this car because of the tires that it's on, but super capable, great chassis. Apparently Volkswagen has dialed out a lot of understeer from this car. It feels to me pretty similar to the Mark 7.5, maybe a little bit lighter on its feet. The again, also difficult to tell because of the tire that's on this, but it feels like the stability traction control is pretty intrusive when it's on. There is a sport mode, which is nice, but you still have stability control, and it just kind of gives you a little bit more leeway though. It's a nice middle ground. But you can see how frustrating it is to operate this screen at speed when you're moving in a vehicle. You have to kind of brace your hand at the top and take your eyes off the road. It's a really bad system, and honestly, it's okay when you're living with it day to day and you've got all your settings set up. But if you actually need to change something in there, you're just going to have to pull over because it's pretty unsafe to do anything otherwise. So, some positives. This dual clutch is definitely a highlight. It's a really good transmission. I love that you can double downshift or triple downshift. It'll do it. It doesn't complain. It doesn't beep. It doesn't give you a hard time. Whoa. Brake pedal is nice and firm, not as soft as my Mark 6 was back in the day. There's a really nice amount of power here, great torque, it sounds good. I love this 2-liter. Volkswagen has always had some of the best 2-liter turbos on the market, and this GTI just pays it forward. I think this is still the best car that Volkswagen makes. Despite all my gripes, despite my complaints with all the haptic controls and buttons and stuff that they've changed in this, it's still a really good chassis. It's a really fun car. It's super practical. It does everything that an enthusiast would want out of a daily driver / fun car. Yeah, this is still one of the best enthusiast options on the market. And with that diff, it just rockets out of corners. We got a free entrance ramp. Let's hit it. Torque vectoring. Gets us rotated around that corner beautifully. Yeah, on these Potenza RE71Rs, this is not a slow car. You can feel the suspension stiffen up there over those bumps. Let's put us into comfort mode. The accelerator pedal has a kickdown switch, so if you want to just ride out that torque, let it shift up to 3,000-4,000 RPM and pass a car, it can do it. Or if you want it to rev up to redline all the way down and it'll rev up even higher. Really, this doesn't drive that much differently from the Mark 7.5. There are some minor improvements here and there. I mean, it feels absolutely bonkers on these tires, and I think that's a really impressive factor, but any performance hatchback or hot hatch on RE71Rs is going to feel like this. I think the differences here are in the tech, in the screens, in the design. We've got some very cool ambient lighting throughout this interior. Down here, you can customize it any color. You can change the zones. The exterior lighting is really neat. So a couple other notes about this GTI. Every time you start it up, all the safety systems are enabled. Stop start is enabled, lane keep assist is enabled, and it's a super intrusive, invasive system. So all I do when I start up the car, I turn it off, I hit this little button on the turn signal indicator, turn off lane assist, and I'm ready to go. Because anytime I drive with it, if I need to avoid a pothole or just kind of move around my lane, it's going to intervene, beep, vibrate, and it's just a distracting element that is pretty unnecessary. The other thing, the stop-start system in this car is pretty rough. It sounds like every time the engine starts up, it sounds like it's broken. Hopefully it'll come on here, and I can show you guys what that's like. The engine will turn off a few miles an hour before you come to a complete stop. Not the smoothest, most refined stop-start system. Luckily, you can pretty quickly and easily turn that off with this drop-down menu here. For some reason, can't really get it to kick on this drive, but maybe we'll see it in the winding road video. Also, I'd like to bring you a sound system test in this video, but unfortunately the car's Wi-Fi isn't working, and I didn't bring my cable, so no sound system test today with a Harman Kardon. Head on over to Charlie's channel, Daily Motor. He'll probably have one on this new GTI, and it is a pretty good sound system. The Harman Kardon does sound nice. Is this a better buy over the Mark 7.5? I don't know. That's where I'm a little bit torn on this Mark 8. All the user interface stuff, it really feels like a step backward, and I was hoping that manufacturers would stop doing this. But here we are. It is what it is. I don't think it's a deal breaker. Some people may, and Volkswagen's going to have to live with that, and you're going to have to live with that. So I think the important thing is to appreciate what this car is good at. It's good at literally everything else. And, you know, I think you'd be fine. I would buy this car as it is, as it sits. It is nice that you can completely disable traction and stability control. At least that's the word, is that you can go into those 7 menus and completely turn it off. If you're doing a track day, if you're doing an autocross, that is a necessity. It saves the brakes. It gives you a little bit more control of the car. If you want to have a bit of a hoon in the wintertime, you can do it. I don't think you've really been able to do that in previous generation GTIs, and it is nice that they've finally been able to do that. I wonder what the conversation for that was in the boardroom. Okay, we'll give you everything off, but you have to go through 7 menus to get there. It probably went something like that. Watch out for that deer. I would love to have some more physical controls and buttons. I doubt we'll ever see it, though, on this Mark 8 generation. It'd be cool to have a second screen so that you could run your GPS, your map, and also, you know, maybe change your music selection, your tracks on the fly, or your passenger could change the radio while, you know, you want to see your navigation or Apple CarPlay. I don't know. I feel like a lot of this stuff with the user interface has been thought out in a lab or in a software development suite and not really implemented on the road in real life. And in practice, it's a shoddy system. So anyway, that's my big gripe about this new GTI. It's a interesting direction that Volkswagen has taken it, because the new Taos is full of physical controls. It has buttons everywhere, and it's great. It's really easy to use. It's a very user-friendly car, and this GTI is a step in the wrong direction in that regard. So anyway, I think ultimately, if you were to live with this car, it's not as bad as you would think, but it's a frustrating first few days, and I think it just makes for a more dangerous driving experience over the course of your ownership. It only takes a split second of your eyes off the road for you to swerve over into another lane, or for someone to brake in front of you and you don't see it. And yes, there are a lot of safety systems in this new GTI, but they can't save you from complete distraction. And at least the radar cruise and the lane keep assist are good enough systems to kind of lean on, but they're nowhere near what Hyundai has right now, and they're nowhere near what Volvo has right now. So I think Volkswagen's got a little bit of thinking to do, a little bit of work to do on this interface. I hope they can speed this up, because it is just so slow, so sluggish. Otherwise, though, this is a fantastic car. I have really enjoyed driving this car this week. It's a really nice place to be. It hits all the marks for a hot hatch. It's so well balanced. It's super livable. It has kind of a good range of performance between all the drive modes, the settings, the suspension tuning. You can set this car up beautifully for track work. You can set it up beautifully for daily driving on rough roads. You can go out on a back road and not much else can keep up with or be as much fun to drive as one of these GTIs. So anyway, a few gripes aside, I think this is a really solid car. Is it better than the Mark 7.5? I don't know. I'll leave that up to you guys. I think it looks better, but as far as functionality, I'll leave it at that. All right, guys, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.